Hello and welcome. The main topic of this video is to talk about a very famous errant. But before we get to that, I just wanted to go over recent events in my personal life. You may recall probably about a month ago now I spoke about when I had a fall. That was followed up not last Monday, the Monday before, which I think was about the 25th, where I was almost T-boned on a moped by a car. I was indicating, moved to the centre of the road to turn left, and as I'm turning, this car has decided to try and overtake me. That was a bit of a moment. But whereas the fall seemed to be the marker of a closing of a chapter, that seemed to be almost like it could have gone one of two ways. It does put things into context. My current situation is, it was more than very last in the 11th hour. I thought yesterday I was eating fried potatoes, beans and a fried egg and half a slice of bread, and thinking, well, as things stand, this is your last supper because there is very little else. The weird thing is, when you start running out of things, it gets to the point where you run out of things to run out of. But I had somebody only today has saved the day by enrolling on one of these DAPPER courses. See, I'm not asking for donations, although I have to admit they would be very helpful at the moment. But I would much prefer to give something in return. I've said before on video, I have to put myself through these things. You can liken this to a computer game. So I've got food for maybe about 4 days ahead, but I'm going to eat milk or coffee. That's fast running out, and I have no funds to even replace that. But we'll manage. But this is the early transition stages, and I feel this is something that many of you will feel in a more of a collective sense, that whilst we've turned the corner, I would even go so far as to say up to March the 21st, things are going to seem rather grim. What I can tell you from personal experience, being in similar situations before, that your relationship to the anxiety feeling inside totally changes. And even the weather has reflected this. In the forecast for this last week has been one of nothing but rain, but each day it's ended up as at least blue skies and sunshine. So I'm able to get solar power. So it's almost like being a painter, where you start with the furthest distant. So from my perspective of what I see, it's the sky and the landscape, and then you work on that first, and then things get better and better. So all the links and things are in the description, how to get in contact with me. I offer the DAPPER courses, the DAPPER sessions, which will help empower you as much as it is helping to empower me to get through very difficult times. I have to be very disciplined, very much working around the dry days where I can do things like adding more shingle to this pathway. Anyway, that's enough of that. Oh, look at that, 4:41. So what have we got here? This is a sketch I made of a pair of hands from a cast, and they are of what is probably the world's most famous errant, and that is Ludwig van Beethoven. What is an errant? That is someone who does their own thing, does not follow the crowd, makes their own way in the world. The sort of joke is that they told Beethoven he couldn't write music, but did he listen? And certainly, since his time, his music has been enduring and long-lasting. His Symphony Number 5, that da-da-da-da, is probably one of the most famous four-note sequences. So that's a cast of his hands. And this is my sort of poor attempt at copying a picture of Beethoven. We're sort of deep in thought. I'm not really happy with the end result. It doesn't, to me, look that much like him. What can we say about Beethoven? He was born in December of 1770. He spent quite a lot of his life trying to investigate and establish his date of birth. He was under the impression for a lot of his life that he was born in 1772. That was due to his father lying about his age when he was actually 6, saying that he was 4. So he would be compared as a musical genius to Mozart. So before we even get to Beethoven as such, most famous for his symphonies, but the father of the symphony was his tutor, one-time tutor, and that was Joseph Haydn, born in 1732 and died in 1809. So the midpoint of Haydn's life is the year 1770, the year in which Beethoven was born. Now, interestingly, 1770 from 1764, so he's born 6 years after a Phoenix event of 1764. He dies in 1827 in the March, 6 years before the midpoint between two Phoenix events, the next one being 1902. This gets better. So if we do a breakdown of Beethoven's name, Ludwig, it's Ludwig for his first name. So the L, that's basically a representation of the lower calf and a foot. U is referring to the individual L. The D is a doorway, and that is something Ludwig van Beethoven definitely stepped through. The W is a magical symbol, followed by the I, and then a G, which represents Gaia. So what it's basically, I can decode it as, it's man that steps through a doorway finds his eye upon earth, and his surname Van Beethoven is of Dutch origin, and it means of better garden. And he certainly created a wonderful garden in soundscape that he could only hear in his head towards the second part of his life. He only lived for 56 years, effectively. Quite a short lifespan, but he did suffer, and he had a reputation for being quite angry, which I suppose with all the ailments and physical problems he suffered with through his life, and the onset of deafness, which seems a very cruel thing for a composer to actually endure, but it didn't stop him writing some of the greatest music that has ever been written. So if we take his birth year, 1770, that gives you a reduction of 6. His final year, 1827, gives you a reduction of 9. So he's gone from a 6 to a 9. So you can think of that as like when you're born, you come out head first. He's managed to turn himself up the other way, and now he's holding his head upright. So I've done a little graph here. I don't know how well this will show, this timeline. it splits into very even points. So December 1770 to 1782, it's 11 years of his childhood period. That is followed by 45 years of his composing period, which starts in 1782, goes right through to 1827. So from 1782 to 1792 gives you the second 11-year period, what is known as the Bonn era, when he resided in Bonn in Germany before moving to Vienna. Then from 1792 to about 1803, you have what is called his early period. By this time he had moved to Vienna, where he remained the rest of his life. The midpoint of that is 1798/9, which is when he begins writing his first symphony, the midpoint in his early period. Then from 1803 to 1814 is regarded as his middle period, again another 11-year period. And that is followed by another 11-year period from 1814 to 1824, which is called his late period. By this time he is completely deaf, so he is definitely working from his inner world, but able to express it in a language called music. The symphonies balance. You've got the first and second symphony, apologise for the shaking here, which start with this midpoint of his lifespan. So the first and second symphonies were written in his early period, then symphonies 3 to 8 were written in the middle period, of which the most famous is Symphony No. 5 with that 4-note motif, da-da-da-da. And then the final late period, there is just Symphony No. 9 in about 1822 to 1824. It does balance out with Symphonies 1 and 2. If you look at the duration of Symphony No. 9 is actually longer than Symphony 1 and 2 combined. He wrote concertos over a 31-year period from about 1783 up to about 1815, because obviously the deafness meant he could not perform his works. Remember, we're in an age before copyright. Beethoven was very much an errant because he went his own way. He did not have a patron in the same sense as, say, Joseph Haydn, who worked for the Esterhazy family as his employer almost his entire composing life. So his symphonic output is over a 26-year period, as is his 16 string quartets. There are 32 piano sonatas, so half that number, there are 16 string quartets. There are 10 violin sonatas, but only 5 cello sonatas. So there's a sort of pattern there. Now, something I hadn't actually spotted before until sort of looking into this. Beethoven wrote 722 works in total, but they are split into 3 categories. Those with opus number, works without opus number, which are WOO, and they have a separate numbering system, and then the rest, things he wrote, say, for tunes for mechanical clocks and things. There is a catalogue called Hess that covers all the rest of his output. But what is most interesting about his opus number output is that he wrote 138 opus numbered works. Now, there are no coincidences, but I just thought that was amazing to find that. So his most famous symphony, number 5, it has this motive, this four-note motive known as fate, from its four-note theme: short, 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 long, and it's the equivalent of the Morse code for the letter V. Curiously, Beethoven has been championed by the Allied side and the Axis powers side during the Second World War. But this four-note theme was also used by Haydn in his Symphony No. 96 and Mozart's Piano Concerto No. 25. The finale of Symphony No. 5 introduces the contrabassoon and the piccolo to the orchestra. And I believe it's in the third movement there's what is called a folia, which is a rhythmic melodic pattern used in bars 166 to 177. So that's just I feel is probably the most famous errant that there has ever been. Definitely someone who went his own way, the world's first freelance composer. He didn't let the physical, overcoming the physical difficulties stand in his way. The fact that he was deaf did not stop him writing what is still regarded as the most enduring classical music. If there's ever any sort of the equivalent of pop music with charts and a countdown of top 100, you will find Beethoven is invariably within, if not at the top, but certainly within the top 10. So, to my mind, this is probably the most famous errant. Incidentally, the opus number 138 is ascribed to the Leonora Overture number 1 for his only opera, Fidelio. Now, Leonora, if we break that down, you've got Leo, or Leon, implying a lion and the sun, and then the or, getting to the core. This, I feel, is what Beethoven did. He took music in a new direction, and there has certainly been many composers since who have tried to step into his shadow, but he is such a an imposing character, such a dominant character in the music world, and I should imagine pretty much everybody in the world at some point has heard that famous four-note theme from that Fifth Symphony. His last string quartet, number 16, has the theme of Muss es sein, es muss sein, must it be, it must be, which in a way is another part of the as above, so below, as within, so without, must it be, it must be, which references whatever we focus on is what we bring from the not a thing reality of the unseen realm into the physical realm, into something that is tangible. So it's just it's not that short a video, coming up to 20 minutes. I didn't realise it was going to take this long, but I hope you found that interesting. The fact that his different periods of his life split into 11s. The sum total of his name in reduction, Ludwig van Beethoven, also comes to the number 11. If you add up the letters of his name, it comes to 4142, and then that reduces down to 11. And he's certainly stepped through a doorway, showing the world that you can do your own thing, and you can lead the life of what is really a suffering artist, which many artists do seem to go through, but the legacy of what they leave to the world what they imprint upon this reality, what messages they convey in music. Don't forget, in the time that Beethoven was alive, for example, his Eroica Symphony, number 3, famously, it's been cited so many times about how it was originally intended to be dedicated to Napoleon, but when Beethoven found out he'd proclaimed himself as Emperor of France, he scratched out the dedication, and you can almost see the anger in the way he's annihilated the dedication if you see the original manuscript, which I believe you can find quite easily on a search on Google Images and things. But what an inspiration to us all that we're told things aren't possible, and yet there was a living proof that you can. If you allow the art spirit to work through you and you become a medium of the art spirit, what you can give to the world, and you can overcome obstacles in life. That is very much a theme of the courses that I do. I mean, to put it another way, you would not send soldiers into battle ill-equipped. So with what is going to be coming up in the years ahead, it's not that you don't have the equipment already, it's whether you can find the keys to unlock the equipment to face all these challenges. Something I'm having to do and having to put myself through, and I wouldn't swap this for the world. Whilst the material needs on some of the basic things like milk and coffee and a few things like that, rather than just having the same meal over and over again. I can endure that, that's not a problem. I can forage, there's orange trees and there's lemon trees, so I can add in variety. I've got various herbs and spices, but there's going to come a time where they're going to need replacing. But like I said, I want to give something back. To me, this is my calling. I don't feel there is any other path. This path seems to be laid out for me. So I'm just sitting here, waiting to hear from any of you to help unlock and empower you to get through what can seem like very challenging times, partly based on my own personal experience and how I've had to deal with things and overcome certain things. And it is an ongoing process. But we survive another day, and that is all I can do at the moment, is work in periods of days, not even weeks. But I'm further refining these courses. The more people that do come along and enroll into these, you're under no obligation. You could try just 1 or 2 sessions, see if it's right for you. There is no one size fits all with anything, but I would love to be able to help you to unlock the true potential inside yourself. That is going to be the make or break as to whether you can meet the challenges and overcome them yourself. So I'll leave that there, and as always, unconditional love to you all.